Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm going to introduce you to a woman who can change your life. As a figure skating coach and choreographer, Ashleigh Renard spent 2 decades building trust and fostering teamwork, growing her synchronized skating organization to one of the biggest in the world. Now she offers support and encouragement to millions of couples every week. Her own story of rehabbing a shabby marriage, Swing, a memoir of doing it all, has been called the sexiest, funniest, and most deeply felt memoir you will read this year. I've read it and I completely agree. So here to talk about her memoir and so much more is Ashleigh Renard. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Ashleigh.
Mike, thank you for having me. I can already tell this is going to be a great interview, great hour, or however long we chat.
Well, however long. It could be 2 hours.
It could be.
I won't go full on Joe Rogan with the 2-3 hour interviews, but we'll see. So I always ask, I always say this is about the stories behind the story. So Ashleigh, where does your story begin?
Yeah. Okay. Swing begins when I'm standing in line to go to the bathroom at an invite-only sex party in New York City that looked like a casting call for The Bachelor. We had to send in headshots and a relationship bio. And by we, it's me and my husband of 10 years, to get on the guest list. But the real story starts, unfortunately, at my friend Jamie's kitchen table when we were 11. When I was 11, Mike, my favorite way to spend an afternoon was to sit down my friends' Catholic mothers and ask them what their opinions were on different types of birth control. And I thought, after those afternoons, I was like, oh my God, that was the best ever. I felt so grown up. I felt like I got education, like we had a real conversation. And it wasn't until my 20th high school reunion that Jamie said to me, hey, Ashleigh, remember that thing you used to do? Like ask my mom sex questions? That was so embarrassing. Do you know that she's still so Catholic? And it wasn't until then that I realized that not everybody thought that was like the best afternoons, the best afternoons ever. But I realized I love talking about things that are awkward. Like that's the way I connect with people the most easily. And even when I coached athletes, adolescents mostly, for all those years, and I did not talk to them about sex very much at all, but almost everything an adolescent wants to talk about is freaking awkward. So being there to hold space for those awkward conversations, I think is what had me sort of trip into this niche that I'm in, if we could call it that, where all day, every day, I'm answering questions in my DMs about how people can keep their relationship hot, how they can get along better with their partners. I say a lot of my videos are about sex, but all anybody wants to talk about in my DMs is feelings. Mm-hmm.
You're talking about being 11 and asking your friends, Catholic mother questions about birth control and sex. I mean, I'm Catholic. I know how repressed we are, sort of culturally and religiously. To me, it's like I'm listening to you say that, and I'm like, ooh, that's making me feel uncomfortable. And I'm 48 years old.
I know. I was such a weirdo, and I never realized, But I have come to really embrace that. And because I really am, ever since I was super little, I was so curious about sex, like the physiology, the biology of it. And then when I was a teenager and young adult, I was just like curious about the attraction and the pleasure part of it. And so now to be having conversations with couples, and telling you, 1/3 of my followers are men, but 80% of my messages are from men. Mm-hmm. And they're not the kind of like sliding into the DMs that you would think after someone sees a video. It's like, thank you so much. My wife has been saying this and X, Y, Z. And it wasn't until I saw your video that I understand, oh, she means this. Oh, and I just feel like I can communicate more easily with my partner now from hearing your perspective.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, you say it kind of starts, kind of in the book starts off standing in line, at the bathroom at a sex party in New York. How did you get to that point? I'm just curious. So you'd been married for 10 years up until that point, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So bridge the gap for me there.
Okay. So first off, my husband, Manny, and I were like I said, I was kind of a weird kid in the way of things I wanted to talk about. He and I were kind of weird young adults when we met. I was 21, he was 22. We were just out of college. We took the same job in New Jersey. So I went to University of Manitoba in Winnipeg because I'm Canadian. And I have a degree in exercise physiology from there. He played Division I college football for Temple University, and he has a degree in exercise physiology from there. So we met at this job in New Jersey, and say in my book, I've never seen The Sopranos. I had never seen The Sopranos at that point, and like Jersey Shore didn't exist. So I was like, New Jersey, like this sounds so pretty. And I looked at Trenton on the map as the capital, and I was like, oh, that sounds like King Triton from The Little Mermaid. Like this place sounds gorgeous. Okay, so moved to New Jersey, and actually a very pretty part of New Jersey. It is the Garden State for a reason. And he and I just hit it off. Like I say, we tried to be friends for like 2 minutes. And then we were dating, and we were just so practical. Okay, like we were ready to be little grown-ups. And I don't know if it was from our sports background or, you know, he grew up in a really traditional, strict Greek family. And this was he was actually the first sibling to move out of the house, even though he was the youngest brother. I don't know. We were just ready. And we were so practical, and we tried to be really pragmatic in the way we talked about things too. Like, oh yeah, I'm not a jealous person. No, neither am I. And oh, you know, even if you were to maybe do something with someone else, like, well, I wouldn't get that worked up about it. Like we just tried. Some of it was true, but I think we took that practicality to, you know, kind of a higher than what was true level. But one of the things that was good is that we were always comfortable talking about sex, even though I grew up in a really progressive home. And like my mom told me about reproduction when I was 4. And I was like totally with her, Mike. I was like, all right, I get it until she said the word fertilize. And then I pictured my dad out mowing the lawn, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand how babies are made. Like this makes no fucking sense. Right. And then, and Manny grew up, he didn't even know the Greek word for sex because his parents had never said it. Okay. So we grew up in different ways that way, but we both really liked talking about sex. And we were both like really physical, and like there was a lot of attraction there. So before we were even married, we were engaged. We Googled, and I mean, it was hard to find back then, right? Because this was like 2004, like sex clubs in Philadelphia. Because we were like, that could be like, oh my God, do they really exist? Is that a thing? And we went to a club. It was called Club Kama Sutra, down on South Street in Philly. And it was the best night of our lives. And then we were watching the news. We just did our own thing, and the stories and swing. We were watching the news a couple weeks later, and it was like the teaser for the news, and it's like local sex club shut down for L&I violations. And he and I looked at each other like I swear it was like we were at like campaign headquarters, and like election results were coming in, and we were so invested in this thing. We were like heartbroken. And I think it's because neither of us were big partiers in our lives, mostly because of athletics. And letting loose like that and just having fun and going out, it was something we weren't used to, and that we experienced it together and had that kind of fun and excitement. And like sort of, you know, there's this part of it too, when there's a secret between you and your couple, that you and your partner, that's really exciting, that it heightens everything.
Right.
So then that club closed, and then we thought, okay, we got to get back to the work of being responsible adults. So we got married, and we had baby after baby after baby, and he built his career, I built my career. And then we are bored and disconnected and super stressed. So he works in the stock market by this point, and I coach figure skating. So like, if you ever want to get a stomach ulcer, like start trading stocks, especially like shorting them, like do options, right? And or work with figure skating parents. So we are like so stressed. And we're finally at the point where our youngest can go for a sleepover with the older siblings at my in-laws. And we're like, oh, maybe we could see if like there's a place like that again. And that is really where Swing starts. Got it.
So what were you looking for as a couple? Like, you know, when you're thinking about kind of re-entering, would you call it the lifestyle or
It is called the lifestyle. Okay. Yeah. I say it's like the swing lifestyle. I like to say you know, you can't call us swingers because that is discrediting people who actually do it well. We are the world's worst attempted swingers. So I can tell you everything that you shouldn't do. And that's what swing is. It's like a do not list. So what I thought I was looking for and what I was actually looking for were two different things. And therein lies a little bit of a problem when you are opening up your marriage and going like, you know, beyond the mainstream in a certain way, like really knowing what you want out of it is important. And I thought I just wanted something fun and stress relief. And what I really realized awkwardly by meeting other couples and, you know, falling in love with someone, which is, like I said, is like the biggest no-no if you're going to do this kind of thing, was that I desperately wanted emotional connection and intimacy and validation that my straight A's never got me, that like all those times on the figure skating podium never got me. And, you know, there's a thing about athletics or any sort of like highly disciplined activity that you may take on like early in your life. For me as a skater, I learned so young, like probably by the time I was 7 or 8, that it didn't matter what my body was saying. Like it didn't matter if my muscles were aching or screaming. It didn't even matter if like I had cut myself with my blade, because that happened a lot, especially in synchronized skating that I competed in. It didn't matter what my brain was telling me. It didn't matter if my brain said, stop, that doesn't feel good, you're tired. I learned to ignore those things and perform. And it was really celebrated. It was really celebrated. So I then got to a place where I was like 35 years old and I realized, oh, I don't have a clue what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, or what my body's trying to tell me. Because what I've done all this time is just look at like, what does that person want from me? Who should I be for this person? How can I be better there or achieve more? And that's why swing is called a memoir of doing it all, because I say like, I took doing it all to the next level as the world's worst attempted swinger. Because just everywhere I was just overdoing, overreaching, and getting into such a martyr mom type role in parenting and in my marriage.
How long was it between when you got married and when you had your first child?
I was pregnant like 14 months later. So yeah, he was born just before our 2 years. And we were actually trying for 8 months before we got pregnant with him.
Right.
So yeah, kind of close. And then our second was born 22 months later. And I know a lot of people have kids closer than that, but it knocked us out. It was really, really hard for us to handle. Each of us we were each working 6 days a week. And, I barely took a leave, and Manny took like maybe 2 days off, maybe. So yeah, we were really fried. And yeah. I get a lot of messages now from couples who are in that stage with like really little kids. And I don't know how any of us make it through alive. Like, it's really intense. Like, looking back at it, it was really an intense time.
Yeah. I mean, to be transparent, I went from having 0 kids to 3 kids in the span of 3 minutes. We had triplets.
Oh my God.
Right.
Okay.
They're closer to 20 than they are 19 right now. So their birthday's in a couple of months. Wow. But just getting through, the first 6 months, then the first year, it's not easy. And there's a lot of, there's not a lot of time for connection, with your spouse. And then just kind of going through the whole child rearing process. It's, you could see where couples need to learn how to reconnect with each other. And for us, we were married. I was married at 24. We had the kids by 27. So we didn't really have a lot of that time, early in the marriage to have our little adventures. I can tell you right now, there were no sex clubs in Philadelphia. Kama Sutra or otherwise. But now it's funny, like looking back, it's like now we're empty nesters because the kids are at schools. And now we're just learning how to reconnect, and it's not easy. You think, oh my gosh, everything's going to change. There's like a lot to unpack over the last 18 years, that it's not like, it's not easy.
There's no light switch that goes, oh, kids are out of the house, so our stress is gone. Okay, naked nooners or whatever it is, right? And this is, all right, what swing seems like it's about sex, and there are some sexy scenes, okay, but it's not about sex. It's really about those things that go unspoken, the things that go unsaid that we think, okay, or that maybe we bring up a few times, but we don't get anywhere with it with our partner. And then we just shove it down further. And that happens no matter the gender, no matter the sexuality of a couple. Like, it just happens in long-term partnership. You choose your freaking battles and you shove down the rest. And even the battles that you're choosing, I mean, are we choosing them because they're the most important to us? Or is it like the thing that's going to be the least, the smallest fight, or what? I mean, why? It's sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like that's what I like to invite people to consider in my videos and in my newsletters is like, okay, what if, and I just like leave a little space around, oh, what if you just asked your partner X, Y, Z instead of why haven't we had sex in 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever it is, like, let's just like open this up a little bit. Because so often we are disconnected from our bodies and pleasure and prioritizing pleasure. I mean, the only time, I think we're just hardwired as humans, the only time we really prioritize pleasure as a couple is when we first meet, when like that internal pharmacy is going wild, right? So you go wild too in the bedroom. Otherwise, like, there are so many, I find on my platform and in the messages I get, a lot of times people assume it like goes down gender lines, like men want this, women want this. I think that we all are just so conditioned to deprioritize our needs and do whatever, like deprioritize what we really want to do and do the important work or this or whatever, that I think coming together physically and having true emotional intimacy requires vulnerability and awareness of what we really want and how we're really feeling. And until we can tap into that in ourselves, it's really hard for us to connect with our partner in a way that feels fulfilling to both of us.
See, I'm curious about a couple of things you said there. The first was about deprioritizing. We all kind of deprioritize our needs. And it sounds like just from your background growing up, skating, putting your physical pain aside and performing, that's kind of where it begins when you're deprioritizing your needs. And then you realize that kind of later in adulthood, that's what you've done. And now you need to prioritize yourself. Am I hearing that correctly, or?
You are hearing that correctly. And let's just put another layer on top of that. Okay. Let's go back. We're deprioritizing our needs as a kid, whether it's because we're an athlete or because like we were just human children, dealing with parents who, maybe were, had tempers or were really demanding or had high expectations in different areas, or employers or teachers who were hard to be around. Okay. As kids, we developed this like hypersensitivity to what other people needed, right? To like stay out of trouble or to get along, whatever it was, to try to like please the people around us. And then we get to be adults and we're so sensitive, right? We're so sensitive because like that kept us safe and it kept us, like out of trouble. It kept us like, it was the path of least resistance when we were kids. And then when we're doing that for like, a coworker who could fly off the handle or a boss who's demanding, whatever, we continue doing that as adults. So we're hypersensitive to what other people need, but really numb to what we need inside. And then we have a partner who wants to connect either physically or emotionally or both, or wants to like have that conversation about money that like you haven't had yet, whatever is going to like fill part of them, right? And we can't open up ourselves to really know how we feel about that or connect to them on a real level because we've done like this superficial kind of dance around other people for so long.
Yeah. Right. And, some of us learn from a very young age that when we try and express our needs, we're somewhat punished for it, not necessarily physically, but, by the reactions we get from other people when we kind of say, hey, you know what, I have needs too. And then they're kind of deprioritized. And, I just know experiencing that from my own life. I have a twin brother who was always sick as a kid. So he got all the attention. And as a result, I was, sort of learning how to cook for myself by like 4 or 5, with my grandmother, because she was taking care of me while my mom was taking care of my brother. So just kind of, but that taught me a lot of self-sufficiency. And unfortunately, what that did was, when people come to me and they're not, let's say, as capable as I am in certain areas, it makes me very frustrated because it's like, well, I figured out how to do this. Why can't you do that? That's kind of another tangent we could go off on.
But Mike, you just described like my first 10 years of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
I was super self-sufficient. I was the oldest child, and I was the easy one, and when my own children would be children, express needs, emotions, I was so triggered. And by triggered, I mean, like, I felt like when they would scream and cry, I felt like my skin was on fire. And it was like holding space for their emotion, when at the same time, it reminded me of the times when I had big emotions when I was a little kid, and it was shut down. Like, this is how it went once I was like 11 or 12. But Dad, you're grounded. But Dad, 2 weeks. But Dad, 3 weeks. So like even the words shut it down. And then when I was little, it was like, in your bedroom, right? Go to your room if you're going to cry. So it's like, and I think that is not very far from the norm, right? For like, Gen X kids or older, right? Maybe some elder millennials can relate to this too, but I think that it was normal, like, just make them stop. Yeah. So, when my own kids would have feelings, I would be like, why can't you get it together? Like, and then feeling my feelings coming up. I think that's like, I don't know if everybody goes through this. And I don't know, Mike, if you and your wife experience this, because you were experiencing it times 3. So I don't know, like, is it just like a whirlwind? So just like you see the years, it's like a Tasmanian devil go by, 3 with 6 legs. Okay. So for me, I didn't realize like what things were hard about growing up until my kids hit those ages.
Yeah.
And it was just like seeing them just express and muck their way through the things that are going on when you're 2, when you're 4, when you're 14. It made me realize, oh, I thought I was fine. Like, not only did I push things down so I looked fine to other people, like I convinced myself too. So that's one of the things in swing. What I realized was, okay, yeah, it's not just I'm disconnected from my husband and just like losing my shit with my kids. It's like, oh, have I even listened to myself in a decade, you know? So that was the biggest relationship shift, was renegotiating my relationship with myself.
So that's where it's got to start. But what I'm curious about is, you mentioned kind of a disconnection with your husband, and potential solution is to open up the marriage, which sounds counterintuitive. I mean, to some people, right? And it because you think about it, it's like, oh, we'll just I'll look for sort of that connection in someone else. But what I've heard from people who are sort of very active in the lifestyle, it's that, so long as, you and your partner are on the same page with regards to entering the lifestyle, it leads to so much more communication that that's kind of that actually it's it's the added communication that is almost, I don't want to call it the Band-Aid, but that's almost the secret sauce. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. So a few things there that you said, Mike. All right. The level of communication required even to go to a sex club once is like beyond what you would get in like 5 years of normal marriage. Okay. Like once, like to choose a club, buy a membership, pick your outfit and go. Like there's so much communication required. Okay. So when we first went to clubs, my husband wasn't interested in engaging with other people at all. Like, I mean, if I kissed another woman on the dance floor, he would probably give that like a thumbs up. Yes, that would be very cool. That would be very cool if that happened. Okay, it was me getting this high. And there's a story in the book of the first time we were ever in another room with a couple. Okay, first of all, just for everybody listening, sex clubs are a thing. They're always packed, like always. We've been to different locations. We've been to different places in the world, Mike. They're always packed with normal humans, like you would see at the grocery store. Okay.
I appreciate you calling me normal, but go ahead.
just like regular people. All right. So, then there are usually like big open areas where people get it on. There are private rooms, whatever. So we went into a room with this couple that we met because things were getting like really sexy on the dance floor. And we went to the back and there was only one room. All right. We were each going to go to different rooms, but there was only one room. So we went in together. Okay. And when we were all in there, like engaging physically with our own partner, I kissed the other guy and he said to me when we were kissing, okay, this is a very sexy moment for me, Mike. Tell everybody to just prepare. He said, "You are so hot," when we were kissing. Okay, call me superficial, Mike, but here I am. Okay, a mom of 3. I don't know the last time that Manny, my husband, had told me I looked nice. Like, I don't know when it was. Like, years, it had been years, definitely, but like I couldn't remember the last time. And even for probably 3 or 4 years before that happened, he had never initiated an "I love you." So, and when I would say it, he would say like, "Good night." So, okay, but okay, people are maybe screaming like, "Oh my God, that would not fly in my house like for a minute." Okay, I'm used to like, here I am showing up. Oh, I got nothing. Okay, I'll come back again tomorrow, judges. Here I am. Oh, I got nothing. Okay. It's like, make it look effortless and beautiful, even when like you're getting shitty scores from the judges, or you're not getting anything back from the husband, or the toddler dumps their snack on the floor. And then in my professional life, I was dealing with skating parents who are like, "What have you done for me lately?" And I'd be like, "This is what I'll do for you today." So I really had got myself kind of backed into a corner. And so when that happened, I was like, "Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. So I'm realizing I'm liking this attention. And okay, so maybe I can like get this attention and like keep my family together and like my marriage together and just get that." And then that spiraled out of control, like really, really quickly. Because I realized it wasn't just like, "Oh, you're hot." It was like, "Oh, I want someone to tell me I'm funny and a good mom. And I want someone to like listen to my ideas." And like, it just like opened up this whole like Pandora's box. It was like, I wished I could go back and like, that wouldn't have happened. So I wouldn't have been like, oh, I actually have all these needs. Because from a really early age, like the thing I thought was the least tolerable about myself was being needy.
Right. But so it sounds like you didn't just need the physical pleasure that accompanied, what was happening in the club. It was that real emotional connection, that validation,
Right,
that you had
exactly.
some worth.
That emotional intimacy is what I've realized it is now, that I needed that emotional intimacy. And like, we actually never had that. We like had like a spark at the beginning, and we were like really compatible as far as like getting along and making decisions. And like, we had our first mortgage 11 months after we met. We were just like, we got along and we were compatible, but like that intimacy wasn't there. And I reached for it sometimes and wouldn't get anything back. And I think that part of that is like growing up in really traditional gender roles, or really like really congruent, concentrated kind of cultural way of being, is that my husband really believed like, oh, something that makes me a male is like, oh, like I don't have those feelings that like my mom does. Like he saw, all around him, right? Like these are the emotions that like women have, and these are the emotions that men have. Because like in traditional Greek families, like they're very, very different, right? And that fear of vulnerability was really big in him.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You mentioned that, his parents had never, said the Greek word for sex in front of him. Have they read the book?
They do not read English, Mike.
I assume that's a good thing. And there's no Greek translation.
There's no Greek translation yet. No. So here, and this is part of the story, if readers read it, but my ability to get along with my mother-in-law was really, well, it was a really difficult situation. It was a real struggle because I was used to like showing up like, top of my class, or show up as like student council president, or like, hi. And so to walk into this woman's house and her to go, are you sure this one? Are you sure? It was a real knock to my ego, right? I was like, what? I can perform anything for you. What do I need to perform? And it was like, oh, Greek virgin. Like that's not in my repertoire. It's like not.
It's true. I mean, you can do something about being at the head of your class, right? You can study hard. You can do something about, getting, a perfect score on the ice by practicing. You can't do anything about not being Greek.
I can't do anything about not being Greek. And it's wild because she left Greece to come to the US when she was about the same age that I was when I left Canada to come to the US. But I came as a single woman on purpose. And she was like, who would do that? Like, who would leave their family like on purpose, right? Because she had an arranged marriage to my father-in-law, and he lived in Philadelphia. So like they spent their honeymoon in Athens doing her immigration paperwork. But part of me getting honest with myself and getting honest in my marriage, and more honest with my kids and my parenting, and then, even in my professional life, and deciding that I actually needed to leave skating, I became a little addicted because I do have quite a focused personality, obsessive personality, quite a focused personality. I became enamored in like, oh, what if I just say that thing that I don't think I could ever say? What if I just have that honest conversation? And so I started having those with my mother-in-law, and the first time she hung up on me, but it got better after that. And that also gave my husband the opportunity to like just stick up for me for the first time ever. So we'd been together like almost 15 years at this point, and he had never gone to bat for me, period. And I had never actually even pointed this out to him because I was just used to going to bat for myself.
Right.
So we have had really honest conversations, and she knows what the book's about, and she knows there's a Brad, and she knows there's an Amber. And she also knows that she's never seen us as happy as we are now. And she's never seen the kind of teamwork between us and like the joy that both of us have around our kids. Because this is the point I got to, Mike, where I and I go through it in the book, like how I really figured out, oh, fuck, like the problem is here, right? And all right, I actually taught mental training. I taught a self-awareness. I taught like there was so much of my coaching that was up here and not on the ice, right? So I was like, I can do this for myself. I can like retrain, figure out how to treat myself better. And that's part of that is the love letter exercise that I took in a lot of different directions in the book. And then I got to a place where I was like, okay, you know what? I'm filled up enough. And this took a while. This isn't overnight. This is like 6 months or a year, where I realized, okay, you know what? If our marriage is over and we can't have this kind of like connection that I want to have with another human, because I realized, oh, I do want that and I am worthy of that, and it's good and it's okay, and that's what I want. Then maybe we're done. Maybe we're done here. And when I brought that to Manny, my husband, there was no ultimatum that I was saying. I was like truly like, okay, wait, maybe we've come as far as we can. Like we've done a lot of really great things, but like maybe we can't do like an intimate partnership. Like I want our kids to know is possible. And if we can't, I don't want to pretend anymore. Like, oh yeah, this is what marriage should be like. Like I want them to set the bar higher for themselves. So even if neither of us find someone else, like I want to be able to say like, mommy and daddy, we figured out a lot of stuff, but like, we couldn't figure out that. I don't know. Like, please, when you do, like, we can't wait to learn from you because we couldn't figure out that part. It was like I had been on mute for 15 years and somebody took their finger off the mute button. And he was like, wait, what? I think in that moment, Mike, I think what happened was his fear of vulnerability of being like an emotional human, a whole human, and what that would mean, right? Suddenly became smaller than his fear of his family not being in the shape that he wanted it to be in. Mm-hmm. And just then all of a sudden something else becomes scarier. And he's like, okay, I can, okay. And like, it was like a few walls just dropped like right in that moment. And I was like, oh no, but like, we're done. Okay. So like, I'm kind of excited because this is like a real blow to my ego. Like I'm going to get separated. All right. And he was like, no, we're going to do this. And I was kind of annoyed because I'd been doing work on my own for so long and got to that place where I really did feel like, all right, I don't know what the future brings, but I know that I'm going to go in a different direction than I thought I was going to. But things really change. It's really wild. And I want to caution people, and I do in my writing, like, don't start like writing yourself love letters so your partner will change. Like I had tried so many things to shift our marriage into a different place before. And I realized like, no one is going to really change for you unless you are willing to change for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what the real change in catalyst was. I call it our marriage 2.0. Because it's so different. It really is. It's not like, oh, now it's great. Like when we were dating, oh my God, it's so much better.
Yeah. But there is a risk there, because when one person goes through the effort to change and focus on themselves, and the other person does not, maybe the other person is just comfortable in the status quo. When, I know, like for myself, like I can't stand the status quo. Like I need to evolve. I need to change. But when one person does, I call it doing the work. When one person does the work on themselves, the other person kind of stays in, where they are, that could, tear, that there could be a tear there.
Absolutely. But listen, this is what I think. All right. So when you are in a partnership and it's like, okay, yeah, we're committed, we're doing this life together. But there isn't actually the nurturing that goes two ways. There isn't actually the cherishing, the caring, the like all the cliche things that are in vows. But I mean, they're nice, right? Because it would be nice if like we are loved and cherished and held. And I think that it eats us up from the inside. Like something that's metastasizing, that's like just going through us. And we can't be who we want to be professionally. We can't be who we want to be with our kids and our friendships, because on the inside, it's getting darker, it's getting rusty. Okay. When one person changes, the relationship's going to change. Okay, the relationship is going to change when one person really changes with the intent of like, I'm making my journey here on Earth School better for me. Like I'm figuring out like how to navigate this meat suit and like not hate myself. Okay, like I want to be on my team here. All right, when somebody actually does that, then there may be a tear. There may be like a huge wound that's open. But I say this in the book, I'd rather tend a wound in the open air, right? Than rust from the inside out. And I think for kids too, I got to the point where I was like, it doesn't feel like I'm living in integrity if I pretend like things are okay for my kids, because they fucking know. Kids know they have that internal bullshit detector that like, you know, it's probably the best when they're little, right? And then they think, oh, I noticed this, but the grownups around them are acting like the opposite. And they're like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. No, kid, you're always right. But then the adults around us want to protect us in some way. So I really got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, I would rather say to my kids, yeah, mommy and daddy, like we're better like friends and business partners than we are like married people, because we can't figure out and tell them specifically what we can't figure out, than to pretend, and, or even to like, yeah, to separate and it'd be like, all right, we are all hurting because these expectations, like we expected that it would go this way and it didn't. Okay. How do we work through that together instead of just pretending that something's not wrong that is?
Yeah. You know, so I really am fascinated about sort of the personal story of you and your relationship with your husband, and how you really, you know, you call it, you know, turning it around. But there's another story here that I'm curious about also, which is how you pivoted just professionally from being, you know, a coach, which is, you know, having started, you know, skating when you were so young, always being around it, doing it as a profession, and sort of leaving that behind you, writing the book, and then making a career out of this. I'm just curious about like that part of the story as well. I mean, how scary or exciting or whatever, you can pick the word, was it to actually make, you know, the changes in your professional life like that?
Yeah, terrifying. And I knew that I couldn't not. That's one of the things, like how I said, I kind of have become addicted to honest conversations. And so part of that is, I mean, fuck, I ignored my intuition and my body for so many decades. Like just to give people like, for 30 years straight, I was on the ice 6 days a week. Okay. So like, it was my life, right? So I ignored anything that my heart or my body or my brain were trying to tell me for so long, that I think the only way I can make it up to myself is to listen now. And that means when I hear something, when my gut tells me something, I can't ignore it. And so instead of waiting for permission from someone else or you know, taking my inclination and like measuring it against some chart of like, what would a good mom, good wife, good employer, blah, 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 blah do? I've just been like, if my gut says I should, then I should. And I started just trying that. Terrifying. Like I was ready to shit my pants before every hard conversation. But every single time every single time that relationship or that situation changed, every single time. And most of them changed for the better. There are some relationships that fell away completely, but I would say that's for the better as well, because in those situations, I always knew this person's not going to be okay with me being my real self. So because I know that, and because they're struggling with this and that, I can be this version of me for them. And I was this sort of constructed facade version of myself for myself for so long that I'm not willing to be in relationships like that anymore. And it is sad. There are, but I would rather be sad than fake, because sad for me is manageable. Fake for me is unhealthy, and sort of like an old addiction. It's like someone falling off the wagon. It's like if you're an alcoholic and you know you can't have one drink, you can't have one drink. So me just pretending that things are okay when they're not, it's that same kind of situation for me. So when I started getting the inclination that I needed to stop coaching. So first, for your audience, my idea was never to be a skating coach. I always wanted to be a writer. But I was on the ice for the first time when I was 2 years old. Even though when I was 9 is when I decided I wanted to be an author, figure skating has a way of taking over a life unexpectedly, like a forest fire, like leaving little attention and few resources for anything else. And then it's like 3 decades later and you're like, oh shit, I never left the rink. Okay. I did. I bounced around between rinks all over North America. But when I decided I needed to do that, I knew I needed to do it. And I knew I needed to be honest with my athletes. And the thing so most of what I taught my athletes had nothing to do with skating. It had everything to do with like trusting your intuition, knowing how you are different than the people around you, and knowing that that's fucking awesome. Because even though I taught synchronized skating, like getting 20 kids to do the exact same thing at the exact same time, I was like, the only way this works is us understanding we are all so different. Like we are all so different. And that is so amazing. And that's where our strength is. Okay. Understanding how we can synergistically cooperate, how we can work together. And one of the things I would tell them, like they would come to me for lots of things, right? Like they would come to me if they were having a fight with their parents. They would come to me if the first time they got dumped. They would come to me when they're trying to decide on their college. Like, because for a lot of my athletes, like I coached them for like 10 years straight. Like they came to me like in 2nd grade and I would coach them till like they went to college. Okay. So it's almost like I'm a family nanny or something, right? Like I'm like part of the kid's life for all this time and I get to see the dynamics of the parents. I'm just not in their kitchen. Okay. So they would ask me all the time for advice. And I would say, well, what do you think that you should do? And they're like, well, I think I should do blah, but, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, stop. Okay. Everybody else is going to have an opinion on what you should do, but you have the answer. So it's not that people don't know what to do, Mike. It's that they're afraid to do that thing because of what other people think. Okay. And that's what I got to see over and over with the skaters. So then during my last season, I got to walk that with them and say, look, everybody else has an opinion about what I should do with my career. And everybody else, like if we had polled all of humanity, they would have been like, Ashleigh, stay, right? Even my husband, he would have been like, just stay, don't write this book, right? I said, but we have to have the awareness to hear what our intuition, our gut is telling us. And then we have to have the courage to fucking do it. Okay. Because if we know and we don't do it, then it's like, it's worse than not knowing. Okay. And then they get to see me. Like I used to have, at the biggest, I had 150 skaters on 10 teams. Okay. So when I look now at like pictures from our like end of the year ice show or something, and we're all holding hands, standing in a circle, I'm like, oh my God, it's like this huge panoramic photo that like we almost cover the whole ice surface of the rink. I'm like, wow, that was big. Now I have 8 million impressions a week online for my content. So I want to tell people, when you have that pull, like, oh, wait, I actually think that I meant to do something different or bigger or like in a different direction, to go for it. And then I came from a field where I'd lived my whole life there. All right. My mom was even a coach. She started the first team in Manitoba. Okay. And then I'm considered, an expert in my discipline, skating, right? Like I'm one of the coaches who've been around the longest. I know everybody, and I'm going into publishing where I know nothing and I have no friends. So I feel like stupid and lonely for a while, Mike, until I realized that, oh, okay, whoa, one of the things that either attracted me to coaching sports or was fostered there is that from the time I learn something new to the time I know how to teach it is 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's like a superpower that I didn't know I had, but I came into publishing and I was in these writers' Facebook groups and stuff, and people are asking questions. And I'm like, oh, I knew that. Like, I've known that for years because I always wanted to be a writer. So like, I just retain information really well. And I love learning things if I get to teach someone else it. So I have become a leader in the writing community too, like in publishing and in building platform. And I just never realized that the skills that I developed somewhere else would show me a path and build a community in another area, which maybe everybody else knows that, Mike, but I had no idea.
No, but you know what I'm fascinated by is, well, I'll just make an observation. The cost of entry for a writer or an author is having a good story to tell. And yours is a very good story. It's an emotional story. It's a provocative story. But it's also very well written. So it really is very well written. But the story though, and how it's presented is only one part of success. The other part is kind of getting it out there, getting it in front of prospective readers, and your ability to build a platform. To me, I mean, that is a superpower in of itself, because that's what most authors can't do. Certainly not what most first-time authors can do. It takes a very long time. What's the secret to building a platform?
The secret is to act as if you already have one. Okay. The way that I got myself to rewrite my book to the version that got me 2 agent offers was to put on my calendar that my manuscript was due to Whitney Frick, publisher at Dial Press Random House, on March 1st. So I was like, all right, this is the book that's going to press. We better get it together. All right. So I rewrote that book, and I added 22,000 words of detail and dialogue. And thank you for telling me it was well written, Mike, because I have been figuring out how to write since I quit skating. Like, I know I used to say, yeah, I used to tell my stories on the ice. Now I use my words. Okay. So like, I knew storytelling. I knew, how do we hook in an audience? How do we hook in the judges? How do we take them on this emotional journey that lasts 3.5 minutes? And I knew, like a narrative arc, right? During a program, I want them to feel this here and this here, this here. And then I'm going to drop them off right here. And I know exactly how I want the judges and the audience to feel at the end. And I would tell my athletes, people watch figure skating because they want to feel something. And that's the same reason that people read a book. That's the same reason that somebody scrolls goddamn TikTok, Mike, because they want to feel something. They want to be entertained. They want to laugh. They want somebody to, stroke their confirmation bias politically, and they want to feel right, whatever it is. What I have been able to create online is people will see my content and go, oh, you know what? My relationship is kind of okay where it is. And, oh, I think there's this little thing that we could do to make it better. Okay. I think part of this is from coaching adolescents for so long. Coaching adolescents is sort of like trial by fire stand-up comedy. All right. So I would be like, pause the music. Music would pause. All right. 20 or 40 or 60 heads would turn towards me. All right. They each have a pair of eyes, and they would look at me, and I would need to get their attention, remind them that we're on the same team, tell them what I wanted them to do, and tell it in a way that was kind of interesting. So they would remember when I press play and they go do it. Okay. It's the same thing in a 30-second TikTok or Instagram video. I'm gonna disarm you at the beginning. I'm gonna say, hey, we're all friends here. Yeah. So in my bio, it says Rehab to Shabby Marriage, wrote a book about it. Okay. Oh, so she's not pretending like her marriage is perfect. Great. Because I mean, I just go bonkers with like momfluencers and like, you know, all of that culture and hashtag marriage goals, whatever. No, marriage is hard, and that's okay. And we can, you know, getting the spark back is work, but it can be fun, not a fight. Because so often, like when we're not getting our needs met, like there's resentment that's built up. There's this, there's that, there's habits, there's conditioning, there's like all of these patterns that we have. So I acted like I already had what I wanted. I said to myself, you know, okay, so even before I rewrote the, no, it was after I rewrote the manuscript. Okay, I got an agent. I was totally underwhelmed, Mike, by the process of someone else pitching my creative work. Totally underwhelmed. I had been recruiting for a sport that nobody knew existed for a couple decades. So I was like, wait, how are you pitching it? How are you doing it? Blah, blah, blah. Like I realized part of my brain was a marketing brain, even though I didn't know that, because I had to tell parents all the time, oh, okay, yeah, there are 40 other activities that your kids could do, and most of them are less expensive than this one, and you won't be cold. But this is why your kid needs to come here. This is what your kid can get here that they're not going to get anywhere else. And I wouldn't use those words, but I would just show them with like the way I would treat their kid, right? The things I would talk about that were important to me in the program. The why of me coaching synchronized skating. So I found that entirely underwhelming. I broke up with the agent and I was like, okay, you know what? I can't contact another agent for 45 days. Okay, I'm just going to start posting whatever I want on social media. I'm just going to have fun for a little bit because I've been working so hard on my platform, even since before I left figure skating. And simultaneously, Mike, everything I posted, I was like, I hope this goes viral. So like an agent and editor contact me. And I hope that I'm not completely missing the mark and I'm going to get blacklisted forever and no one's ever going to want to work with me. At the same time, everything I posted, like no pressure, right? So then when I broke up with my agent, couldn't contact anyone else for a month and a half, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to post whatever I want. And a friend of mine who happens to be a psychic, I mean, if you can have a friend who's a psychic, like bonus. Okay. She said to me again, she's like, Ashleigh, do you remember when you gave that advice about really picking a different time of the day to have sex? I'd said this in my stories like 2 years before. Someone had asked me, the people were just asking me advice in my stories and like about how to potty train, this, that, because I like being an expert on so many things. I at least know like the 3 main points of like how to do almost everything. It's like a coach's mind. Like I can demonstrate like any exercise like 3 times, right? Or whatever. So I had said, okay, first thing, if things are boring in the bedroom, like mix up, like think to yourself, what time of the day do I really want to have sex? Because in my house, mornings are for coffee and nighttimes are for sleeping. Those are the only thwant I want to do at those times. So don't nudge me in the morning and be like, hey baby, fuck no. I want to brush my teeth and I want to drink my coffee. At night, I am like, because my brain's a busy place to be. I go hard all day. I crash. I sleep, I swear, for like 10 hours every night, Mike. So if we wait until the kids go to bed and my husband's like, hey, honey, I'm like, last thing on my mind. So I like to have sex at 5:30 p.m., which is like in 26 minutes. Just kidding. So I like to, and then when I told her that when I said that in my stories, like 2 years before, she's like, that completely changed our sex life. And I was like, really? Like I got a lot more up my sleeve on that. She's like, you do like make it. And this was right when reels were coming out on Instagram. She's like, make that a video that can be on your feed. Cause I would send that to friends. Okay. Wasn't even in my Instagram highlights. I'm like, okay. So I made How to Keep Monogamy Hot Part 1. I'm like, I didn't know what Part 2 was going to be, but I called it Part 1 because then that put me on the hook to like make something else. Okay. Now we're like, I don't know, 250, 300 videos in, where just with that same kind of just like, hey, have you ever considered trying it this way? People have just come. So I was working so hard on my platform, and I was for about 4 years before this, and I was growing at a rate of 500 followers a year, okay, on Instagram. All of a sudden, people started looking at my stuff, okay? And in those next 45 days, my audience grew by 55,000 followers. And it wasn't like, what can I post that's so great? It was like, what would just be fun, right? Like, what is just me? Like, what do I talk about with my friends when we're talking about marriage? Like, you know, what's my voice when I like text somebody or leave them a voice memo? And just being more me sounds so cliche. But so many of us don't realize how awesome our personalities are to the people who are friendly with us, right? And what if we can show those best parts of ourselves on a podcast, on a video, in a funny tweet, and just letting more of us, who we really are, go out there into the world.
Oof. Well, you know, I'm conscious that, you know, we're 24 minutes away from 5:30. So I will start wrapping up. But I have to put you through something I call a hot seat, which are 6 questions I ask everybody. Not always the same 6 questions, but the first one's an easy one for most people anyway, although some people get stumped on it. What was your favorite TV show when you were a kid?
The Jetsons.
The Jetsons. What was it about the Jetsons that you liked so much?
It was like magical, you know, like, oh, push a button. Oh, like Rosie the maid cleans up for you. It was just like, you know what I'm realizing right now? So much about their life seemed easy. That's what it was.
Things were just automated, you know?
It was like, yeah.
They had their flying car. They didn't have to go out and walk the dog. They had a dog treadmill, right? Didn't they put Astro on a treadmill?
I need to look back and see Astro on the treadmill.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think that was kind of like the Flintstones in outer space, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole.
It really was. Yeah.
All right. So second question is, how do you feel when you're staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen? You know, you're just about to write something. What emotions are you feeling?
Okay. Back it up. I don't try to create anything until it is bubbling out of me. So I have a newsletter that goes out every Tuesday. It's 5:08 p.m. on Tuesday. I haven't written it yet because it's not ready. It's not ready. And I've learned this through my time choreographing, because I choreographed hundreds of programs. And I always coached teams. So whatever I choreographed, I would then turn around and teach it to like 18 children. So if it wasn't right and I had to change it, then I did teach it to 18 children again. Whatever I force sucks. So I trust that quite often the last minute is my best minute. I am not late. I get things done, but I put myself into a good space where the creativity comes, whether that's meditating, whether that's taking the dog for a jog, blasting some music. I get myself into that space. So then it comes right out.
There we go. Number 3, what lesson about writing or publishing do you feel like you learned the hard way?
That old perfectionism part of me, and that Enneagram 3, and that wanting to do things with the highest level of difficulty, because that's in skating, unless you do things the highest level of difficulty, it doesn't even count. Like, why are you even here unless you're trying the hard stuff? Made me force myself into the traditional publishing route for an extended period of time, with real consequences to my mental health, which actually were a gift, because then I realized I do need support. I do need support for anxiety that I didn't realize I needed before. Instead of, I thought this story is only going to have merit if it is published by a big 5 publisher. And publishing independently is the healthiest thing I ever. If I would have been signed by Whitney Frick at Random House, my book probably wouldn't be out yet, Mike. I would probably have needed extension after extension, and I probably wouldn't be in a very good place right now.
Yeah. And you get more control over it too when you publish it independently.
Absolutely.
So similar question. What do you feel like you had to learn about marriage the hard way?
I really thought that if you pick the right person, it'll be easy. And I never, So anytime it wasn't easy, I thought, fuck, I picked the wrong one. And now what do I do?
Yeah, so there's you putting the blame on yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfectionism is a special kind of narcissism. It really is. It really is.
That could be the title of your next book. Perfectionism is a special type of narcissism.
What's the word? I mean.
Question number 5. What's the best piece of advice you could give to a couple who comes to you and says, hey, you know what, Ashleigh, we're just in a rut right now. What do we do?
My best piece of advice is for each person to have time every single week doing something they love alone. Giving yourself permission to do something physical, get in your body, do something that's like, that lights you up, whether that's a painting class, ceramics, having time to take a hike with the dog. Those are the things that I think are going to help you connect with your partner physically better than, try a position, do this, do that, schedule, give each other blowjob coupons. I think having time, saying in this family, in this relationship, we prioritize physical pleasure and wellness. We do that. We do that here. We want everybody to here to be in a good space mentally, a good space physically. So, hey, what does everybody need to do to make that happen?
All right, last one I call my Brad Paisley letter to me question, because if you're familiar with that song, it's a song in which he writes a letter to his younger self and he gives himself all kinds of reassurances. If you could do the same thing, if you could write a letter to your younger self, what are some of the things you would tell the younger Ashleigh?
I would just tell her you were right.
Right about what? Everything she felt in her gut about people, about places, about things, when the adults around her wouldn't admit it, or tried to make it look like something else. Her gut was always right. All right. So Ashleigh, we've been talking about your life. We've been talking about your book. Where can people go to pick up Swing, a memoir of doing it all?
It is available everywhere books are sold. If you would like a signed copy, you can go to my link in bio, and go to my you can go to my link in bio on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It's ashleighrenard.com/links. And you'll find your way to my website where you can get signed copies in Canada and the US. I have a new book that's coming out in a few weeks, Mike, called Keeping It Hot, the Workbook, which is, yes, it is going to be so fun. It's going to include a lot of testimonials and success stories from my audience and ways they took my advice and made it their own or shifted things in their relationships. Which I think is really, really fun to see how different people use their own creativity and what they know about what they love and their partner loves, and just they make it something totally different and amazing. I'm on Instagram every day, in my stories every day, Ashleigh Renard on Instagram. That's where you can find me. Is there a pre-order for that new book, or do we have to wait till launch day? There will be a pre-order. It is not up yet. I have 2 newsletters. I have a newsletter for advice for couples. You can go to my website and sign up for the Keeping It Hot PDF, which I update when I've got new tips or new bedroom electronics or ideas for people that seem to be working well. And then you'll be on my email list there. I also do coaching for writers. So you can go to thewritersbridge.com. I co-host a free biweekly platform Q&A for writers, always free, always recorded. The recordings are available for a week after every Zoom, every episode. And I have a paid newsletter for writers called the Express Lane, where every Monday and Friday, we deliver an actionable, bite-sized piece of platform building advice, like an exercise. What are promises to writers, and my co-host is Allison K. Williams, an amazing writer and editor, is if you do nothing this year except those 2 little exercises you're going to get dropped in your inbox, your platform will grow and you will develop stronger connections with your audience.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Ashleigh, thank you so much for coming on, talking about your life so candidly, talking about your book, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me, Mike. This was a blast.